The profound sanctity of the Sabbath in the Book of Jubilees 2:23-29. A theological analysis, study by Richard Estrada. The Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish text, offers a distinctive and amplified perspective on the sanctity and observance of the Sabbath. Classified as an apocryphal or pseudepigraphal work by most Christian denominations and mainstream Judaism, it holds canonical status within the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church and Haymanot Judaism. Its genre is often described as rewritten scripture, a characteristic that is central to understanding its theological contributions. Rather than merely recounting the narratives of Genesis and Exodus 1:20, Jubilees actively reinterprets and expands upon them, infusing additional details and alternative versions of stories. This deliberate reworking indicates a specific authorial agenda, where the unique strictness and theological points concerning the Sabbath are not incidental but intentional amplifications of existing biblical law. This interpretive approach is foundational for analyzing the book's stringent demands and unique theological claims regarding the Sabbath. Composed in Hebrew, as evidenced by fragments discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, Jubilees is currently dated by scholars to approximately 170 to 150 BCE. The author is believed to be a Palestinian Jew, possibly from a priestly background with Hasidic or Essene leanings, a conclusion drawn from their detailed knowledge of Canaanite geography, biblical festivals, and laws. This period coincides with the Maccabean Revolt and the broader Hellenistic crisis, a time when Jewish identity faced significant external pressures from Hellenistic culture. The book's strong emphasis on absolute separation from Gentiles and its call for Jewish unity are direct responses to this challenging environment. The heightened emphasis on Sabbath observance, its strictness, and its exclusive nature in Jubilees can be understood as a theological strategy to reinforce Jewish distinctiveness and prevent assimilation. The Sabbath, as a visible and recurring marker of Jewish identity, thus became a central battleground for maintaining purity and covenant fidelity in a challenging cultural landscape. The discovery of at least 15 manuscripts of Jubilees at Qumran underscores its significant influence and widespread use within that community. While not considered a strictly sectarian document of Qumran, its prominent presence suggests a shared theological milieu, particularly concerning calendrical matters and strict legal adherence. Within Jubilees' broader framework, the Sabbath is presented as a great sign, Jubilees 2:17, a foundational element of creation and a central sign of the covenant between God and Israel. It is intrinsically linked to the divine order of the cosmos and the precise calculation of time, reflecting a meticulous organization that emphasizes divine order and the sanctity of time. The Sabbath's elevated status in Jubilees 2:23-29. Jubilees 2:23-29, particularly verse 32, elevates the Sabbath to an unparalleled position of holiness. The text explicitly states that the Sabbath is more holy and blessed than any Jubilee day of the Jubilees, Jubilees 2:32. This declaration represents a direct theological elevation of the weekly Sabbath above the less frequent, yet profoundly significant, Jubilee year. In the canonical Torah, the Jubilee year, occurring every 50 years, is a radical institution designed for social and economic restoration, involving the return of leased or mortgaged lands to original owners, the forgiveness of debts, and the liberation of slaves and bonded laborers. It embodies deep principles of justice and compassion, aiming to prevent permanent socio-economic stratification within Israel. For Jubilees to assert that the weekly Sabbath is more holy than this transformative, once-in-a-generation event is a deliberate and potent theological claim. This elevation signifies that the consistent recurring observance of the weekly Sabbath is considered the supreme expression of holiness and covenant fidelity. It suggests that the foundational act of rest and sanctification, repeated every 7 days, is more central to Israel's identity and ongoing relationship with God than even the infrequent, though impactful, Jubilee year. This underscores the Sabbath as a continuous, accessible, and indispensable marker of God's presence and Israel's peculiar status, ensuring constant engagement with divine holiness. The Sabbath's holiness is deeply anchored in the creation account, where God himself rested and hallowed the 7th day after completing his works. This divine act establishes the Sabbath as an inherent part of the cosmic order. Further reinforcing this cosmic dimension, Jubilees 2:18-19 states that all the angels of the presence and all the angels of sanctification, the 2 highest classes of angels, are commanded to keep the Sabbath with God in heaven and on earth. This detail is a significant elaboration not found in the canonical Torah. By portraying celestial beings, specifically the elite classes of angels, as Sabbath keepers, Jubilees imbues the Sabbath with a cosmic significance that transcends purely human obedience. This directly links human observance to the divine order of creation and the ongoing activity of the heavenly realm. This portrayal elevates the Sabbath from a purely human commandment to a cosmic, universal institution integral to the divine order itself. It implies that human Sabbath observance is a participation in a heavenly liturgy, aligning humanity with the very structure of creation and the activity of the most exalted celestial beings. This cosmic dimension profoundly reinforces the Sabbath's sanctity and the extreme gravity of its profanation. Violating it is not merely breaking a human law, but disrupting the fundamental harmony of the universe. Furthermore, Jubilees unequivocally emphasizes God's exclusive blessing of the Sabbath for Israel. The text states that God did not sanctify all peoples and nations to keep Sabbath thereon, but Israel alone. God specifically chose the seed of Jacob, Israel, from among all peoples, writing him down as his firstborn son, and sanctified him forever to keep the Sabbath. Jubilees 2:22. While the Torah presents the Sabbath as a sign of the covenant with Israel, Exodus 31:13-17, Jubilees amplifies this exclusivity to an extreme degree. It asserts that Gentiles who attempt to keep the Sabbath would be committing adultery because Israel alone is the bride of Yahweh. This goes beyond merely stating a privilege. It actively prohibits others from observing it. This radical exclusivism transforms the Sabbath into a primary and non-negotiable boundary marker of Israel's unique covenantal relationship and national identity. In the context of the Hellenistic crisis, this theological stance served as a powerful tool to solidify Jewish identity, reinforce absolute separation from Gentiles, and resist assimilation, asserting a divine mandate for their distinctiveness and purity. Dimensions of Sabbath observance, inner duty, and uncompromising obedience. Jubilees emphasizes that Sabbath keeping is not merely an outward, superficial observance, but an inner duty of the heart. The text explicitly warns against forsaking the Sabbath in the error of their hearts, directly linking internal spiritual failing to external transgression and subsequent divine punishment, including exile. Despite its reputation for extreme legal stringency, this emphasis on the inner duty of the heart reveals a nuanced understanding of religious observance. It suggests that external adherence to the law, without genuine internal commitment, is insufficient and ultimately leads to transgression, as evidenced by the error of their hearts causing the forgetting of laws and subsequent suffering. This highlights a theological concern for cultivating a deep, sincere piety, where the spirit of the law is as crucial as its letter. True Sabbath observance, in this view, stems from a redeemed and committed heart, making it a holistic spiritual discipline rather than a mere performative checklist. This emphasis aims to foster profound devotion and prevent the superficiality that could lead to covenantal breaches. The text demands that the Sabbath be obeyed fully and without any compromise or avoidance, and without any inventions of man. This uncompromising stance explicitly rejects practices like the Eruv, which developed in later rabbinic Judaism to facilitate Sabbath observance by symbolically extending private domains. The explicit condemnation of inventions of man and the rejection of Eruv directly challenge later rabbinic interpretations that sought to make Sabbath observance more convenient. This positions Jubilees as advocating for an unadulterated, divinely revealed law. This reflects Jubilees' commitment to preserving the absolute purity and distinctiveness of the Sabbath as ordained by God, without any human modification or mitigation. It implies that any attempt to ease the strictness of the Sabbath is a defilement of its inherent holiness, underscoring a theological drive for unwavering adherence to the divine blueprint, presumably as recorded on the heavenly tablets. Jubilees provides an extensive and specific list of prohibited activities, significantly expanding upon the more general prohibitions found in the canonical Torah. The Torah outlines general prohibitions against any work, Exodus 20:10, Deuteronomy 5:14, and specifies against kindling fire, Exodus 35:3, gathering wood, Numbers 15:32, and plowing, harvesting, Exodus 34:21. Jubilees, particularly in chapter 50, which elaborates on chapter 2 general command, enumerates a highly detailed list of forbidden activities. These include any manner of work general, lying with one's wife, sexual intercourse, planning or intending to do something, setting out on a journey, especially for buying, selling, drawing water not prepared on the sixth day, taking up any burden to carry it out, of one's tent or house, tilling one's farm, lighting a fire, riding on any beast, traveling by ship on the sea, striking or killing anything, slaughtering a beast or a bird, catching an animal, bird or fish, fasting and making war. Other Second Temple texts, such as the Damascus document from Qumran, also present stringent Sabbath laws, including prohibitions against carrying from house to outside and vice versa, and sexual activity in the city of the sanctuary. However, Jubilees' prohibition on sexual intimacy is broader any place and carries a death penalty, unlike the Damascus document's communal isolation. The detailed and extensive list of prohibitions in Jubilees, particularly the explicit ban on sexual intimacy and the rejection of practical accommodations like Eruv, signifies a profound level of strictness that goes beyond the Torah. This stringency points to a deeply ascetic and purity-oriented theology underlying Jubilees' Sabbatarianism. The author sought to create a comprehensive framework for sanctification, where every aspect of life, even intimate ones, was brought under the purview of divine law on the Sabbath. This was likely driven by a desire to maintain an elevated standard of holiness and distinctiveness for Israel, potentially as a counter-response to perceived laxity or Hellenistic influences that threatened traditional Jewish practices. It reflects a vision of the Sabbath as a day of absolute separation from the mundane and a complete dedication to the sacred, emphasizing a radical commitment to ritual purity. To further illustrate the increasing stringency and specificity of Sabbath prohibitions across different ancient Jewish legal traditions, highlighting Jubilees' unique contributions and its uncompromising stance, the following table is provided. Table 1. Comparative Sabbath prohibitions and penalties. Activity Torah Book of Jubilees Qumran, Damascus Associated Category. Exodus Deuteron Shach, 2 and 50 U.S. Document Penalty, Severity Omi Work Journey thereon in mentioned, but Jubilees regard to any implied by general buying or selling work prohibition. Jubilees 508, Goes a Journey, Jubilees 5012, Travels by Ship on the Sea, Jubilees 5012 sexual relations. Not forbidden. Whoever lies prohibited in the death penalty rabbinic literature with his wife city of the Jubilees encourages Jubilees 508 sanctuary. Communal Damascus isolation document. Damascus document planning. Intendi not explicitly. Whoever says he not explicitly death penalty inji work mentioned will do something mentioned Jubilees on. It Jubilees 508 drawing water. Not explicitly draws water. Not explicitly death penalty mentioned thereon, which he mentioned Jubilees had not prepared for himself on. The sixth day Jubilees 508 hunting, fishing not explicitly strikes or kills not explicitly death penalty, slaughter mentioned anything, mentioned Jubilees slaughters. A beast or a bird catches an animal or a bird or a fish. Jubilees 5012, fasting not explicitly, whoever fasts not explicitly death penalty mentioned. Jubilees 5012 mentioned Jubilees making war not explicitly makes war not explicitly. Death penalty mentioned Jubilees 5012 mentioned Jubilees. Note: this table highlights specific prohibitions. General prohibitions like no work or no carrying may imply some of the more specific prohibitions listed, but Jubilees explicitly details them. Prohibited. The gravity of Sabbath profanation, capital punishment, and eternal consequence. The Book of Jubilees underscores the extreme gravity of Sabbath profanation through its mandate for capital punishment. The text explicitly states, "Whoever does any work thereon shall die, and that he who defiles it shall surely die." Jubilees 2:27. This severe consequence is reiterated in 2:29, "And whoever profanes it shall surely die, and whoever does thereon any work shall surely die eternally." This aligns with ancient Israelite law, where certain religious offenses, including Sabbath violation, for example, Exodus 31:14-15. 352, Numbers 15:32-36 for gathering wood, carried the ultimate penalty. The repeated and emphatic prescription of the death penalty for Sabbath profanation in Jubilees underscores its extreme gravity within the book's legal framework. This severe mandate highlights the Sabbath's absolute sanctity and its non-negotiable status as a divine command. It functions as a powerful deterrent, reinforcing the belief that Sabbath observance is fundamental to the covenant and that its violation poses an existential threat to the community's purity and continued blessedness, potentially incurring divine wrath upon the land. The severity reflects the profound theological importance assigned to this day, a particularly significant amplification in Jubilees 2:29 eternally. While die in biblical contexts typically refers to physical death, the explicit addition of eternally suggests a deeper, potentially eschatological consequence. Jubilees elsewhere demonstrates a willingness to interpret death beyond immediate physical cessation, as seen in its interpretation of "on the day you eat of it, you shall surely die," to mean in the millennium, "you eat of it, you shall surely die." Eschatology, as the theological study of last things or final events, concerns ultimate destinies and the consummation of history. The inclusion of eternally in the Sabbath penalty suggests that profaning the Sabbath has profound, lasting repercussions for one's soul and destiny, extending beyond earthly life into the afterlife or the eschatological age. This adds a profound layer of theological weight to Sabbath observance, making it a matter of eternal salvation or damnation in Jubilees' worldview. Is the phrase "shall surely die." The consequence of being rooted out of the land, Jubilees 2:29, links directly to the error of their hearts, which leads to forgetting God's laws and subsequent exile and suffering. The text's warning that individual Sabbath profanation risks the children of Israel not be rooted out of the land explicitly connects individual transgression to collective consequences. This implies that the purity and blessedness of the entire nation are dependent on the fidelity of its individual members. This reinforces the concept of corporate responsibility within Israel's covenant with God. The extreme strictness of the Sabbath law and its severe penalties are not solely about individual accountability, but about maintaining the collective purity and blessedness of the entire nation in the eyes of God. It highlights the precariousness of their covenant status and the importance of unwavering adherence to prevent national disaster and ensure their continued dwelling in the Promised Land. For profaning the Sabbath, Jubilees' distinctive contributions to ancient Jewish Sabbath theology. The Book of Jubilees makes several distinctive contributions to ancient Jewish Sabbath theology, setting it apart from other contemporary texts. One notable aspect is its insistence on a 364-day solar calendar, meticulously divided into 4 quarters of 13 weeks each. A key feature of this calendar is its design to ensure all festivals fall on fixed days of the week and, crucially, never on the Sabbath. This stands in stark contrast to the lunar calendar that became normative in mainstream Judaism, which allowed festivals to shift days relative to the Sabbath. This 364-day calendar is not merely a calendrical preference, but a profound theological statement and a point of contention in Second Temple Judaism. Its primary design ensures that any other regular biblical holiday does not fall on the Sabbath and does not interfere with its observance. Jubilees 6:32-33, and explicitly state that no Sabbath, as the greatest of all feasts of Israel, ought to be overshadowed by other holiday activities. This calendrical system is a practical manifestation of Jubilees' Sabbatarian ideology, asserting the absolute supremacy of the Sabbath over all other holy days. It reflects a theological drive for perfect order and purity in worship, preventing any perceived dilution or overshadowing of the Sabbath's unique holiness by other observances. This calendrical rigidity also served as a sectarian marker, distinguishing those who adhered to this correct, divinely ordained calendar from those who followed the lunar calendar, which was implicitly or explicitly viewed as a deviation. Another unique contribution is the concept that the highest orders of angels, specifically the angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification, observe the Sabbath with God in heaven. This detail is a significant elaboration on the Sabbath's origins. By portraying celestial beings, specifically the elite classes of angels, as Sabbath keepers, Jubilees imbues the Sabbath with a cosmic significance that transcends purely human obedience. This directly links human observance to the divine order of creation and the ongoing activity of the heavenly realm. This unique theological detail elevates the Sabbath to a fundamental principle of the universe, making its observance a participation in the heavenly realm and its profanation an act of cosmic rebellion. It reinforces the idea that the Sabbath is not merely a human law, but a divine pattern embedded in the very fabric of existence, known and honored by the highest celestial beings, thereby magnifying its sanctity and the gravity of its violation. Jubilees also presents the laws, including the Sabbath, as originating from heavenly tablets that were revealed to Moses by the angel of the presence. This narrative framework asserts that these laws predated Sinai and possess eternal validity. The claim that laws were inscribed on heavenly tablets and existed well before Sinai and enduring forever after is a powerful theological assertion. This contrasts with the Torah's presentation of the law primarily as given at Sinai, suggesting a pre-existent, unchanging divine decree. This doctrine grants the Sabbath law an unparalleled authority and immutability. It positions the Sabbath as an intrinsic part of God's eternal plan, existing from creation and transcending any specific historical revelation. This serves to legitimize and reinforce the extreme strictness of Jubilees' Sabbath regulations, presenting them not as new interpretations, but as the recovery of ancient, divinely ordained, and unchanging truths. It also implicitly counters any attempts to diminish or alter the law, as such actions would be seen as defying the very cosmic order. Finally, the explicit statement that God sanctified the Sabbath for Israel alone, not for other nations, is a recurring theme that reinforces Israel's unique covenantal status and the necessity of separation from Gentiles. The strong emphasis on Israel's exclusive right to the Sabbath and the severe condemnation of Gentiles attempting to observe it functions as a powerful mechanism for identity formation and boundary setting. This is particularly salient in the Hellenistic context, where assimilation was a significant threat. The Sabbath, in Jubilees, becomes a crucial, divinely ordained marker of Jewish identity and purity, distinguishing Israel from all other nations. This theological framework justifies strict endogamy and social separation, ensuring the preservation of the covenant people's distinctiveness, and preventing the error of their hearts that could lead to their downfall through intermingling and adoption of foreign customs. Conclusion: enduring insights and legacy. The Book of Jubilees, particularly through its exposition in Jubilees 2:23-29, and distinctive contribution to ancient Jewish Sabbath theology. It elevates the Sabbath to a cosmic institution, observed by angels, and positions it as the supreme holy day, even above the Jubilee year. This text emphasizes the Sabbath's exclusive blessing for Israel, reinforcing their unique covenantal identity and the necessity of separation from other nations. Jubilees demands an uncompromising, holistic observance rooted in an inner duty of the heart, rejecting human innovations that might dilute its sanctity. The severe penalty of surely die eternally for profanation underscores the Sabbath's absolute holiness and its far-reaching, even eschatological consequences for both individuals and the collective. Jubilees is Sabbatarianism, rooted in the concept of eternal laws inscribed on heavenly tablets and supported by a unique 364-day calendar, reflects a deep concern for maintaining covenant fidelity, national identity, and cosmic order in a challenging historical period. Its rigorous theology provides a powerful lens through which to understand the religious zeal and interpretive creativity of Second Temple Judaism, influencing groups like the Qumran community and leaving a notable, albeit complex, legacy in later Jewish and early Christian thought. Offers a profound,